Welcome friends, welcome back to the hangar. So today is the day we start installing the Dynon system, the Dynon Skyview system into Charlie Foxtrot Mike Victor uniform. And as part of the process, we're going to start at the engine. Chris thinks that putting in the engine monitoring system probably at this point is a great place to start. So today is going to be all about running wires and probes all around the engine. There's one probe we won't be able to put in, and that's for the carburetor temperature sensor. And that's because we had to take the carburetor off. Chris ran it over to a friend of his to get a little hole tapped out so that we can actually get the temperature probe sensor into it. So that'll come a little bit later, but that's how these projects go. You sort of work on something and then you work on something else and then you come back to try to finish it. So first up was the oil temperature sensor, and this is the old one, and you would have seen that in the second video that we did where we did the pre-buy inspection, and this is the new one. Nice shiny brass. It won't be shiny for very long. And on the other side you can just see Chris laying out for the exhaust gas temperature sensors.
Yeah. So we're going from the flange. We're going to go, they said 2 to 8 inches. 2 inches seems to be pretty good.
And so Chris needs to drill 6 holes in the exhaust manifold for little temperature probes that are going to show us the temperature. So it's a little probe with a water pump gasket, or water pump clamp, sorry. And the probe goes in and it just clamps on, and it's self-sealing, and the wires connect up to the computer.
Now we just hope that the clamps go around as planned, because otherwise we're drilling holes that we're going to have to fix.
Should we hold that out?
Yeah, sure. Throw them in.
And then each of these exhaust gas temperature probes gets hooked up to this wiring harness, and then this will go through the firewall to the engine management system on the other side. And so next is the map sensor. What is that?
Sorry, the manifold pressure.
Manifold pressure.
Yeah, no.
Oh, and that's got all these tiny little probes, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so those, from what I can tell, link onto this bigger harness here.
Yes. And so there's already a hole in here, isn't there, for the manifold pressure?
I'm going to see if I can get this plug out of here with my margin near the right size socket. Here. Not sure what our best bet is if I try that. Hopefully it's not too tight, but there are all these things are.
And so that's intake manifold?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's easy.
And so on this plane, because it has a fixed pitch prop.
There's not a lot of point to it, is there?
No. Doesn't really matter too much for this aircraft to have the intake manifold pressure, but it's something we can look at on the screen.
That's all there is to it. When we go tying up all the wires and stuff like that, we'll tie up this line a little bit. Otherwise, there's oil pressure.
Another 2 wires taken care of. And so that just reused the existing.
Yeah, so they talked about see, what you don't want to happen if this line breaks, that all your oil spews out really quickly. And so that's just the tiniest little hole in there. And so rather than playing with it and messing with something that's original, we can just reuse that section. Right? And so we just disconnect it from here, which goes to the other gauge, and then move it over to here. And this puts it so it's got a little spring to it. I'll make it really nice before we're finished. And then we'll move on to the fuel, which would be nice to have the carburetor for, but I think we can figure it out.
And so this is the fuel line, and I guess we're going to cut it somewhere in the middle here to put in the. It's a. What's it called?
It's a flow transducer.
A flow transducer, and that just tells you what your rate gallons per hour or liters per hour is.
So we got the little cube. There's a little transducer, or sorry, a little turbine. And so as the fuel goes through, can we see it? You can kind of see it in there. I don't know how well you can.
Yeah.
Whatever. As the fuel goes past, it spins it, creates a small little voltage, and it picks up that voltage. Right? Or transforms it, better yet, because it does get some power in. Right? And then transforms that voltage, then it determines on the other end what it is. This one, Glen, for future use, has got, they're supposed to say on it. It usually says the beats per minute on it. It doesn't say on this one.
Okay, so let me get that straight. So it's a turbine that creates electricity,
Yeah,
and based on the amount of voltage that it's putting out,
yeah,
that's your flow.
yeah. And so we'll have like a power and a ground, like just like 5 volts, nothing really.
Okay.
Right? Maybe it's 12 volts, I don't know. But and that transducer changes that voltage. And then this feeds into our monitor system up there, right? And it interprets the voltage. If it's off a little bit, we simply make a little adjustment to it and adjust it so it trim it out to where it's supposed to be. The first time I did mine, it was way the hell out. But now it's right on, like it's within a couple liters on it, right?
Wow. Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna throw that in. Probably. So we got to figure out where to mount it. The carburetor here. I'm thinking I'm gonna mount it right there. Right, out of the way of the carburetor.
So that'll mount to the engine mount.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so just right about there onto the mount through the unit and whatever. So we'll just cut that line and hope for the best. If we had the carburetor, it'd be a little more exacting, but got a rough idea where we need to be with it.
Well, it looks like that hose has a really good lay to it anyway. It's been
Yeah,
it's been in that position
right there.
for
Yeah.
probably 60 years.
So, okay. Around this, same as you cut the wood, keep it from spray.
Yep. And so that's just it's a pressure fitting of some kind. Just
Yeah,
squeezes.
so we're not quite down there, and then this will screw inside the pipe and just give it like a major pressure. But if I can get it to screw in, that's the bigger problem.
On this aircraft, though, there really is no fuel pressure. Like
It's 5 pounds, I think 5 to 8 is maximum, I think. Alright, come over here. Once it starts to go, I don't want to stop.
Yep.
Looks good. Cleaner.
So Chris just told me a horror story. So when you drove the new end in, it's a compression fitting inside the hose, and you get little flaps, or you can get little flaps of rubber inside the hose, and you've got to make sure that you clean those out completely, because if they get into the carburetor or other parts of the fuel system, cut the fuel and no fuel, no engine, you know what happens next.
He's into the bushes over there.
So part of this whole process of making this hose or putting the transducer in the middle of the hose is to make sure that there's no...
Well, even that, like if we had crap in here, it gets in that transducer that quickly.
Yep.
Then we could just scrub the transducer.
Yep. So
it looks like my end's actually better than the original one. But they're all good. They're in there, no flaps.
we're all good?
Yeah.
Cool. So the next step in the fuel process of making this hose is to pressure test it.
So we're hooked on, we're all clamped up. If any, this is a, over here we got a pressure gauge.
Yep.
Right, so bring up the pressure. How many pounds? There's 1,700 pounds. Right, and it'll drop a little bit because the hose is expanding, but it'll stay steady once it gets to the expansion point. So right there, and they say 30 seconds.
So no leaks,
No leaks.
no explosion, no popping.
Yeah, and so it should take the 5 pounds it's worth because it works up to 1,700. Yeah. It's
Okay.
steady. Yeah. So and what that does is expand the line and flex it and set those joints now. So we'll leave that. I'll get the other ones right up here.
Hose is good. Hose is good.
Hose is good.
Now that the panel has been completely removed, right down to the bare metal, we're left with all of the previous holes of what was in the aircraft. And I've been working with a guy named Lyle to come up with a plan for what the new panel will look like. So I told Lyle what we were going to be putting into the aircraft, and he sent back an initial drawing saying this is kind of a layout that works with the sizes of what you're putting in and the existing holes and all of the stuff that happens behind the panel that you can't interfere with the new instruments. He sent us that drawing. Chris and I looked at it and said, well, you know, what if we moved this over here? And I think we're going to have a different switch. And so a little bit of give and take. We sent back a drawing. He sent us back another drawing, which we approved, and then sent us this, this test fit plexiglass. So this is cut to all of our instruments, and it fits on. And so what Chris and I will do over the next couple of days is fit this on here. Kind of goes like that. And test fit the instruments and make sure that the new Dynon system is going to fit in the right places. And also make sure that the placement of the instruments is right for me. There are several things that have to be done. You can't just put the instruments in willy-nilly. They have to be in line of sight. And there's certain instruments that have to be in your line of sight, and there's other ones that can be off a little bit in your periphery. This is also probably the only plane I will ever buy and own. I'm 55. Realistically, this is the plane that I'm going to fly until I stop flying. I want to get it right for me. So I will probably spend quite a bit of time sitting here in the pilot's position, hangar flying, looking at the instrument placement and seeing whether you know, some of the control knobs are in the right place, making sure that the switches are in the right place that's intuitive to me. Since I'll be flying it, I want it to suit my flying style. And also, Chris is going to be looking for things that are more about the function of the aircraft. So we've moved the mixture knob up to here, and making sure that where the mixture goes through, it doesn't interfere with the yoke mechanism at the back, making sure that it's got a straight shot through the firewall so that, you know, the cable doesn't get kinked and so on and so forth. And then we'll start putting the panel together. And that's the next part where this becomes important. It's test fitting everything before we make that final call to Lyle, and you'll meet him then. We'll do a Zoom call with him and we'll do the final layout, and he's going to cut the panel, powder coat it, and laser etch all of the markings so that everything is just going to look beautiful here in the front of the aircraft. So come on back for the next one, and we're slowly ticking along here. Actually, I shouldn't say slowly. It's coming along really well. I'm kind of amazed, and I think the Dynon system is going to go in really quickly. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon, and thanks for all of your comments and support.
Where did I find that? How did I come across it? POV. Oh, it was in their schematic. Here. Now I got lots of paper to dig through too. It'll drive you nuts. You'll be like, holy f***, stop digging through that pile. There it is.
So in a big way, we're pretty much through the planning phase, and you've got it straight in your head.
I got it in my head. We got it figured
Got
out.
it figured out.
We know what circuit protection we need. We know how we're going to identify our wires going back.
Yep.
We need pieces because we've got huge orders out. And so
So we're waiting for wire and switches and breakers and things like that.
yeah, and a little bit like we're going to change our layout a little bit here.
Yep.
We got to do that, and otherwise it's just a matter of starting to mount up our brackets.
Yep.
Our sensors and stuff like that. And once they're in place, then I'll know the lengths of the wires, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have a major some wiring fun. Run our wires for the strobes and stuff like that, and then we'll start and then just start plugging and playing.
So some of the antennas are already on. Some of the engine monitoring is already hooked up.
It's hooked up. We're waiting on cylinder head temperature probes because the bayonet wouldn't work. We need the ring style.
Yep.
And so that's the last of that. We've got our fuel flow. We're going to do that here once our parts come in. Hook
Yep.
up the fuel flow. But all our temperature and other probes are there. Oil pressure, oil temperature.
Yep.
We'll finalize the little fitting for the oil temperature.
Waiting for the carb to come back with the new hole in it?
Yeah, and the new hole, and so they spot faced, and so we'll have a nice little thing to go in.
Okay.
So the carburetor and then the airbox can go back on. Then we simply hook up our cylinder head and EGTs. I didn't want to wait until I knew the lengths of my others, so I get in this clean
Yep.
thing. And then we'll tie everything up, tie up all the wires, and firewall forward, we're done. We're ready to start running again. The alternator is hooked up all except for the circuit breaker and the indicator light, which is down back into the panel again. So once we get our mounting brackets and everything in place there, then I can just hit. I think once we've got a few little things done out here and some wires run, I'm gonna have to spend 2 days sitting in the cabin. Just
fiddling.
Mindlessly hooking wires one to the next, to the next, to the next. So we've got we had the problem with the intercom system, so we're waiting on an intercom.
Yep.
But we've got the schematic for what it is. We've just got to get our layout.
We'll be honest. The problem with the intercom system was me.
And, well,
was me not understanding that I needed an extra piece of equipment.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And or not wanting to listen to your wife.
Not wanting to listen. That's probably the bigger problem. Most of my problems come from not wanting to listen. Yes.
So it'll change it a little bit, but I think we're there. We know everything we need. Down the road, we will have the ability to put 2 more places into the intercom.
Yep.
And so if we want to go to the back seat, we'll simply pin in and move in some cables, real simple. So, which is another question I had.
So it's coming together.
I've ordered some mic and phone jacks.
Yep.
It's mono. So will mono work with your headset?
Oh, it's the
Yeah. So our system is mono.
whole system is mono.
Yeah. And now I don't think it's a problem, but it might be a problem.
Well, I mean, the planes that I've been renting have all been mono.
Are they? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And the
so
headset works
the
fine.
headset
Yeah,
works.
okay. So that the idea to be stereo is kind of like what